You are listening to the podcast for learning the language of A Course in Miracles so you can understand the meaning, embody the message, and live the teachings as a way of life. Welcome to episode 4 of this podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Jennifer McSween, creator of this podcast and the Course in Miracles practice coach for taking those who are studying the Course from inspiration to application. On this week's episode, I'm going to talk about the meaning of a miracle from the perspective of A Course in Miracles. Now, from the perspective of the world, a miracle is an extraordinary, inconceivable solution to a problem, a change in a situation, or the healing of a condition that disturbed your peace of mind, threatened your livelihood, or perhaps your very life itself. It is perceived as extraordinary because it appears to have happened outside the ordinary norms of human possibility. And it's inconceivable because you might have explored and exhausted all the different ways and the resources you knew of, thought of, or imagined to solve the problem or change the situation or condition without getting any results or getting your desired results. You might have probably become resigned to having the problem or condition be a fact of life for you. And seemingly, out of nowhere, and by no means you can explain, the situation mysteriously changed. A classic example would be something like this. You're given a diagnosis and it doesn't sound promising. So you get 5-second opinions and they all concur. The prognosis is not good. You decide you're going to try everything. You try conventional medicine, unconventional, alternative treatments. You try praying, faith healing, you name it. You might have even tried things that were preposterous. For example, gargling with peanut butter. If somebody had suggested it in that state of, wanting to have a change, you might have tried it. But all to no avail. So your medical practitioner literally advises you to, go home, put your papers in order, because you probably have about 6 months left. However, 5 years later, not only are you still here, but they can't find anything. Everyone would say that's a miracle. And from the perspective of the world, it would be considered a miracle because, number one, you would have considered yourself healed because the condition that threatened your life is no longer present. And two, your healing would seem to have come from outside the realm or the norms of human possibility. Now, the problem with this perspective, though, is that it rests on, as well as reinforces, a misperception. And it is the misperception that we are our bodies, that we're human beings, vulnerable victims of circumstance. So that means that what we do, have, and or experience in our lives and in the world determines the way we feel, the quality of our lives, and our life itself. And so as victims of circumstance, we feel we need to change the threatening circumstances or conditions in order for us to feel safe, healed, or at peace. Now, when we hold this misperception, we literally live our lives trying to orchestrate, change, or control the circumstances, events, and at times even other people that are in our lives so that we can feel safe, we can feel healed, or we can be at peace because we really feel we're at the mercy of or affected by everything, whether it's something someone says or don't say, or what they do or don't do, or how we're treated. This approach, however, never works because we can't control outcomes. Everything changes on its own and in its own way. And we have absolutely no control over what others say or do, nor do they always treat us the way we would want them to. So we always seem to be chasing after that elusive state of peace and healing that we're seeking. From the perspective of A Course in Miracles, a miracle is a change in perception, not a change in conditions. And the perception you're changing is not of the person or the situation, condition, or the behavior, but you're changing the perception of yourself, of how you perceive yourself in relation to the person, the situation, or the condition. One of the Course's most fundamental and liberating teachings is that you're never a victim of or victimized by anything or anyone. And this is because our true nature is spirit. And spirit cannot be hurt, harmed, endangered, changed, or affected in any way. The Course goes on to say that all feelings of attack, victimization, or being unfairly treated in any way begins with the misperception of yourself as an ego, a body, something other than spirit. And I'll talk more about both of these later in later episodes. But suffice it to say that identifying with the ego or the body will have you perceiving yourself as a victim. When you perceive yourself from the perspective, or when you see yourself from the perspective of spirit, and recognize what that means about who you are or what you really are, you realize that it's never what happens, but the way you look at it. That is your perception that determines the way you feel, think, and ultimately experience anything. The Course defines a miracle as an experience of love. In its most basic literal form, the experience of love is the experience of peace, safety, and a sense of healing or wholeness independent of circumstances or conditions. So you don't need to change or do or fix or have anything be a certain way in order for you to be at peace or feel healed or safe. Ordinarily, as we go through our daily lives and make our way through the world, because we see ourselves as victims, we feel threatened at every turn. Rarely do we experience safety, a sense of wholeness, or peace of mind, or even happiness for that matter, for any extended period of time, because there always seems to be something that is taking that away from us or preventing us from having that experience. Now, in order to change this experience, we need to change our perception. We need to learn to experience miracles instead of misery as a way of life. In other words, to not feel victimized by the presence of a circumstance, condition, or the behavior of another person. As the title suggests, the body of work that is called A Course in Miracles is designed to teach us how to shift our perception so we can experience peace, safety, and have that sense of wholeness, whether it's personally in our relationships and as we encounter those circumstances and conditions that very often appear threatening. That is a miracle from the perspective of A Course in Miracles. And the means by which we experience miracles by shifting our perception is through the practice of forgiveness from the perspective of A Course in Miracles. And that will be the topic of next week's episode. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast for understanding the language of A Course in Miracles. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review. Subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and please invite your friends to listen. Have a great week, and see you on the podcast next Wednesday.